Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation has served the Indigenous community for over 30 years. From humble beginnings, the corporation evolved from a single desk and a disused dormitory building at Clontarf Orphanage to become an internationally acclaimed and respected Aboriginal corporation. Dumbartung's mission was to understand and promote our cultural arts and spirituality to empower the healing of our people's lives and communities. During the early 1990s, Dumbartung coordinated the highly acclaimed Kyana gatherings. The festivals were held on the very grounds that were once the hunting and ceremonial sites of the old Wadjuk peoples. In excess of 25,000 people attended these gatherings, and they are considered to be the most significant cultural gatherings in living memory. Aboriginal prison art is a unique form of painting that was created through the incarceration of Bibbulmun people in southwestern Australia. Dumbartung fought hard to ensure that the proprietary rights of the artworks were retained by their rightful owners.
But the only thing about the painting is that when you're in those days, you never had the money or finance to bring your own material in. And this comes back to when we wanted to sell our paintings, the prison system kept our paintings because they said that we used their materials.
The artists soon discovered if they used prison art supplies, their artwork became prison property. That's where Dumbartung stepped in. Dumbartung supplies art equipment, organises special grants for accomplished artists, and even holds a prisoners' art exhibition once a year. And most importantly, the prisoners are the only ones who reap the benefits.
One artist in particular, I think somewhere in the vicinity of $10,000 was made just for his own artwork, so he was able to buy his children the presents and put the food on the table, because that money was signed straight out to his family.
The Wall of Shame was commenced in the mid-1990s. It displayed items considered highly offensive and exploitative of Aboriginal culture. These items range from small, offensive and racist objects to more profound issues such as how knowledge and sacred site areas are affected and damaged by ecotourism. We launched this initiative to initially show our people the wide and diverse ways our culture has been commodified for sale in the world's marketplaces. The Wall of Shame has been studied by academics and interest groups for many years at Dumbartung. Dumbartung was a strong advocate for protecting the intellectual property rights of Aboriginal artists and culture. This was evident in the Marlo Morgan Down Under campaign, which targeted an author claiming to have lived with Aboriginal tribes. The dispute made international headlines and gave Dumbartung the credibility it deserved as a grassroots advocacy organisation. As a result of Dumbartung's continued struggle addressing Aboriginal intellectual property rights, a book was written by Canadian academic Professor John Eustace from the Acadia University in Canada. This book was launched at a community gathering at Dumbartung in 2021. The Cootamaraquab Women's Healing Program has been instrumental in empowering women in our community. These initiatives created at Dumbartung empower our younger generation to survive, while also paying tribute to all our women who have lost their lives to domestic violence and our young people who have passed away as the result of suicide. Dumbartung has become a special place of significance and solace for the suffering and the pain of our people. A place they can feel safe, protected and able to express themselves through the challenges they face. In 2013, a massive summit was held on the grounds of Dumbartung where over 400 people gathered to discuss suicide within the Aboriginal community.
We had a panel that was set up that consisted of government representatives, and they were telling our community from their departmental view and perspectives what they were doing regarding suicide prevention in our community. And it also gave our community the opportunity to ask the hard questions.
At the summit's conclusion, a delegation of 10 representatives met with Premier Colin Barnett to discuss concerns raised from the summit.
Dumbartung developed a action plan to prevent suicide in our community that consisted of a 3-tier approach. The first tier was to set up safe houses, the second tier was to set up an Aboriginal task force, and the third tier was to set up a train-the-trainer concept.
So look, I will go through that and see if, see what can be done. But I do respect you for taking the issue head on, and it's a very difficult issue to deal with.
We presented it to the Premier. The Premier got back to us in letter stating that he was going to issue Dumbartung the support and the resources to activate that action plan.
Okay, look, I think, as I say, I'll get back to you. I'll go through this, but...
and from there, we haven't heard yet again from the Premier.
I wish I had the solution, I don't.
West Australian Premier Colin Barnett has acknowledged that even as funding to mainstream service providers has gone up, so the tragedy of youth suicide has increased. We need a new approach because what we're doing at the moment is not working. We don't need a continuation of an approach that originates in the Premier's office or even in this Parliament, but one that arises from the communities most affected and best placed to identify the kind of help they need. And that means changing and channeling the direction of some of the funding streams. I want to focus on one example of the kind of organisation that we should be supporting if we want to see the gap in life expectancy and health close in a meaningful way. Senators may be aware of the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation, which operates in Perth's southern suburbs. Director Robert Eggington, Project Officer Selena Eggington, and their colleagues over many years have built a unique and important organisation. Dumbartung welds together crisis care and culturally appropriate healing services with an unrivalled collection of artwork and cultural materials, referral services, and political advocacy. I want to particularly acknowledge Dumbartung's work in taking on youth suicide, surely the most tragic consequence of the multiple challenges faced by Aboriginal families. The organisation proposes a break from old habits. It envisages an Aboriginal task force and the establishment of a 3-tier safety net of safe places that begins with culturally appropriate services delivered by Aboriginal people, and it is designed to move people in crisis through a sequence from crisis response to a referral service to mainstream health providers. Dumbartung and advocates like Robert and Selena should not have to spend half their day on the scrounge looking for funding to continue the kind of work that they do from month to month, because it sucks up so much time that could be so much better spent.
Dumbartung has a number of powerful murals and signage of identity that are culturally appropriate and symbolise our pride in culture and spirituality. These signs have been created by artists in our community. For 30 years, Dumbartung has coordinated and developed the highly acclaimed Kyana Gallery. The collection commenced with one single object as a gift to the organisation. The gallery was never funded or supported by the government. It has been visited and toured by tens of thousands of people, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. All have been spiritually moved by the experience. It was awarded a significant assessment award by the Prime Minister and Cabinet and the National Library in 2010 for being extremely important to the history of Australia and its peoples. Dumbartung has travelled the world visiting institutions in the attempt to repatriate sacred cultural objects. Over the past 30 years, Dumbartung has managed to collect in excess of 254 objects. The organisation set up a keeping room where they are kept in a climate-controlled area for their long-term preservation. These are the heartbeat of the Kyana collection. The public and uninitiated people are not permitted to enter or see them. Dumbartung also worked closely with the Kimberley Aboriginal Law and Cultural Centre to repatriate a significant amount of objects from the Western Australian Museum. The organisation has also repatriated through estate auctions, electronic auctions and donations from the public. Dumbartung also featured prominently in the acclaimed documentary Utopia by John Pilger. This led to Robert being invited to deliver a series of lectures in the World Health Organization in Geneva. During 1996, members of Dumbartung were invited to attend the salmon ceremony in Sapporo by invitation of the Anu people, the traditional people of the northern island of Japan. The ceremony was carried out in 2 stages. one on land and the other in long dugout canoes spearing salmon, giving respect to the spirit of the salmon prior to using each and every part of the fish. This demonstrated the spiritualism and ceremonies of the people. The people referred to themselves as the people of the salmon, honouring the giving of life by the salmon so their lives as people could survive. Dumbartung members also met the first Anu politician, Shigeru Kyana, who was a leading figure in the Anu ethnic movement and the last native speaker of the traditional Anu language. Dumbartung has been visited by many dignitaries, otherworld Indigenous peoples and celebrities during its history. People such as the King of Khoisan, the Aztec women, Bishop Tutu's True Centre staff, the Man in Black Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan, English punk rock band The Prodigy and the Dalai Lama. These people all showed a respect and dignity towards the work and initiatives of the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation. However, as stated by Dumbartung many times, it's our people and our elders who are the most important that walk through the doors of Dumbartung. As is always stated, may our campfires burn forever. For the past 5 years, Dumbartung has coordinated and run Aboriginal youth camps called Camp Biara. These camps have been specifically for young Aboriginal people who have been placed by the Department of Child Protection in non-Aboriginal homes. Activities are varied and include storytelling, traditional dance, boomerang making and the basics of Noongar language. Wellbeing sessions encourage the participants to talk about issues that challenge their lives. This is done in and around the campfires at night, connecting young people to the strength of cultural knowledge which promotes their resilience and identity. Dumbartung hopes that these camps are run and coordinated into the future generations, as more and more young Aboriginal children are placed into non-Aboriginal foster care at an alarming rate. These young people need to connect and have participation in their cultural identity through cultural gatherings such as Camp Biara. As part of the emotional wellbeing therapy initiatives, Dumbartung has coordinated hundreds of community-based art courses, utilising such mediums as acrylics, watercolours and paperbark works. These activities have become a major therapy in helping traumatised people with many emotional challenges express their pain and suffering through art. These art courses create a foster pride, accomplishment and creativity whilst being utilised as therapy and a forum for discussion on issues that challenge and confront our young people's lives. Many young people attending these art courses have gone on to become accomplished artists, pursuing art as both a hobby and as a work-related income-generating interest. All participants have warmly welcomed these initiatives and they are keen to continue this interest in the future. They have all completed beautiful and thought-provoking work that justifies that many Aboriginal people are born with a natural ability and skill as artists with raw talent. This art keeps our culture alive and strong as it reflects our connection to land and identity. Dumbartung was approached by the City of Fremantle to be involved in the initiative that called for the Australia Day celebrations to be changed from the 26th of January to the 27th. This was to make the day more inclusive and acceptable to both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. This activism has now become a major driving force across Australia, representing acceptance, dignity and national pride. Dumbartung accepted a tender by the state government in 2007 through to 2011. It was called Redress and it encouraged people from all backgrounds and races to apply for funding regarding abuse and neglect that they suffered whilst in institutionalised care. It was an extremely challenging and very emotional experience. During the first 2 years, Dumbartung had completed in excess of 260 stories for members of the Aboriginal community. This was followed by a further 2 years of counselling and supporting applicants who had opened up raw and very deep abuse issues. This was a tender that Dumbartung took on as a result of extreme financial difficulties. The organisation was in a threatening position of near closure as having near nil funding or any prospects of gaining other forms of funding. The tender allowed Dumbartung to continue payments for rent and all other administration needs. However, this came at an extreme emotional challenge regarding the stories that people needed to express. As expressed by Director Robert Eggington, this was the most emotional challenge that the organisation had faced during its history working in the coalface of the community for over 34 years. Dumbartung embarked on a southwest tour which included taking a number of young Aboriginal students to old mission sites. The purpose of this tour was to take photographs of the missions as they are today and then include archival images of when the missions were actively operating. The exhibition was launched at the Burswood-on-Swan facility and was warmly accepted by all who experienced its dynamic representations.
Celebrating Indigenous way, a means to survive, sing it.
At the 30th anniversary of the recommendations that came from the 1991 Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, Dumbartung were honoured to present the keynote address at the 2021 Perth rally.
Statue for many, many years at Dumbartung, our cultural centre, our cultural hub, our camp, and I knew that one day we'd be in the right place and time to put him and to bring him back to where he belongs, to the fire of hell.
During the address, Dumbartung made a powerful gesture by destroying a statue of notorious child abuser, Christian brother Paul Francis Keaney.
To the hell with the institutional rape and the molestation that caused the end result of the loss of life amongst many, many thousands of young people. The people of the shackles, our people were enslaved into this, the ball and chain.
On the eve of Reconciliation Week and the Tuesday prior to Sorry Day, Rio Tinto Dynamite blasted two highly significant rock shelters at the Juukan Gorge in the Pilbara region in northern Western Australia. Dumbartung coordinated the public rally called Budjanoich, meaning land dying. Over 1,300 people attended the gathering, showing their support against this travesty to human history, Aboriginal cultural heritage and archaeological science. The sites were scientifically estimated to contain evidence of human occupation to be at least 46,000 years old. These shelters were indicated to be amongst the oldest sites on the planet where this type of evidence was found. One rock shelter contained a kangaroo bone that was sharpened to be able to carve wooden implements, which was 28,000 years old, and a hair pelt that was at least 8,000 years old. The most significant shelter contained fossilised evidence of a campfire pit, where a group of 6 humans sat and ate a kangaroo meal. This was the most prominent find at what is estimated to be in excess of 46,000 years old. This preceded the last ice age.
Aboriginal activists have taken their fight to Rio Tinto headquarters over the blasting of a 46,000-year-old heritage site.
United in their numbers, but not necessarily apart. Hundreds gathering today in the city to fire a shot at a mining giant.
It would be equated to blowing up the pyramids of Egypt.
Today claiming Rio Tinto knew about the significance of the caves in 2014 and that the Aboriginal Heritage Act, designed to protect such sites, is stacked against traditional owners.
Noongar Elder Robert Eggington is now delivering a letter of demand walking from Central Park into the headquarters of Rio Tinto.
We do not accept the futile explanation of Rio Tinto that there was simply a misunderstanding.
Under new legislation we're bringing forward, these things will be more closely examined so these sorts of things wouldn't occur in the future.
Rio Tinto now conducting a review of the destruction of the sites.
Always will be.
Just like the Taliban and the Buddha statues, after multinational mining company Rio Tinto annihilates 46,000-year-old archaeology and culture in Australia. Joining me now from Perth in Australia is the director of the Dumbartung Aboriginal Corporation, Robert Edgington, who has been campaigning for the protection of sacred sites from capitalist exploitation. Rio Tinto has apologised and said it was a misunderstanding when it destroyed the 46,000-year-old archaeology in the Juukan Gorge on May the 24th during this coronavirus pandemic. Can you forgive Rio Tinto for destroying it and annihilating the Putukunti, Kurama and Pinkura people's culture?
Well, of course you never could forgive them, and you can't forgive other companies like BHP, Woodside, FMG. They're all environmental bandits that have, capitalised on the wealth of the minerals that lay under the ground of Aboriginal people's land. They export those minerals to places like China. It's a massive economical return to this country, and Australia grows very wealthy and privileged in the Western sense of finance, and Aboriginal people to whom, reside in remote communities that own that land and those minerals are impoverished to degrees of third world conditions.
Dumbartung stipulated to both Rio Tinto and their major shareholders a number of stipulations, which were to immediately terminate the Western Australian Chief Executive, Mr. Chris Salisbury's position, to create a buffer zone around the destroyed site and not allow the removal of any iron ore from a 200-kilometre radius, for the artefacts to be removed from the site to be adequately stored in a safekeeping place, and to reassure the people of Australia that such a cultural and environmental tragic loss would never happen again. On the eve of the Human Rights Declared Day of the recognition of the world's Indigenous Peoples Day, on the 9th of August 2020, Dumbartung asserted the strategic outcome that Rio Tinto was to turn off its massive neon light at 6:30 p.m, showing an indication of their industrial damage to the environment and to the world's Indigenous peoples. This was an extremely important historical gesture which has never been accomplished before regarding the importance of land to Indigenous peoples.
Stand up and have a look at Goliath blinded.
As the light blackened out, Robert Edgington, the director of Dumbartung, stated that this will be the last public activism of Dumbartung, which has been instrumental in fighting for human rights of Aboriginal people for over 35 years. Dumbartung has survived insurmountable odds over 3 decades, and the tireless work has changed our national cultural agendas regarding the priorities and importance in preserving and maintaining our cultural rights and ownership. In 2021, Dumbartung celebrated 30 years since the first Kyana gathering in 1991. The event celebrated the survival of Kyana as the most massive cultural celebrations in the living memory of Noongar people. During 2024, Dumbartung was approached by both the National Indigenous Advancement Agency and the Department of Justice to implement an intensified cultural program into Banksia Hill Detention Centre and Unit 18. This followed the second death of 2 youth detainees by suicide. The program was coordinated and delivered by Robert and Selena Edgington, along with support from young Aboriginal workers. Included in the program were workshops on past government policies, such as the 1905 Native Welfare Policy, with a specific focus on the stolen generations, ingrained trauma and the history of colonisation. At the end of each block, participants received a certificate of achievement. Following the completion of the 12-month program, Dumbartung wrote an observation of the program's outcomes. The observation also highlights several recommendations and proposals for the state government to consider. Dumbartung's history spans 4 decades of initiatives and activism. These initiatives were groundbreaking achievements of social change, political advancement and community empowerment for our people. Dumbartung survived against the odds to become a well-respected and formidable organisation, both nationally and internationally. The organisation has been directed by both Robert and Selina Eggington, forging a history during a time in the community when the last of the stolen generations were being released from missions across the southwest. This journey of change and cultural empowerment occurred during a time of uprising for the recognition of our human rights and for the advancement of our people from the impoverishment and oppression caused by government policies. Dumbartung's history and journey are one of a lived experience. Its non-political or religious persuasion has enabled a true sense of self-determination, reflected in the truth that our solace and salvation will not be achieved by the excellence of academic psychopathology or clinical conceptualisation, but by our resilience as a united people in solidarity and the love of each other. Dumbartung's legacy will always be a light in the darkness of our struggle, resistance and survival. Our maxim was derived from the 1991 Kyana gathering, when Robert Eggington first stated, "May our campfires burn forever." Dumbartung is the voice of our people, telling our story our way. Many of the stories and initiatives of Dumbartung and its legacies are archived in the newly developed Tribal Fires podcast series, which will ensure that the flames of our campfires will burn forevermore.